My sister's husband became a murderer. She hated that my husband had become a wealthy heir. Out of jealousy, she killed me. Given a second chance, she no longer chose that nouveau riche man. Instead, she turned her attention to the poor boy by my side. Sister, it's too bad to give such a potential stock to you. This time, it's your turn to go to hell. Hearing this, I couldn't help but snicker inwardly. All right, you want to experience the ups and downs of life? Then I'll give you that. 1. As soon as I woke up, my sister shoved me hard. She went over and linked arms with a man across from her, greeting him enthusiastically. Little brother, will you marry me? Here's our birth charts, take a look. With that, she gave me a triumphant smile and glanced at me with a victorious look. Well, that's not right. I'm here to meet Miss Felicity. Mason looked at me a little awkwardly. Unexpectedly, I waved my hand and said indifferently, "It doesn't matter, it's all the same." Then I turned around and left immediately. Yeah, it's all the same. My sister and I are twins, so it's normal for our birth charts to be similar. In my previous life, my mother arranged a blind date for me with a friend of hers. They say his family was so poor that they didn't even have a pot to piss in, but fortunately, everyone was kind-hearted. Although life was a bit hard, the son was promising and had great potential. As long as we survived these few years of poverty, we would have a comfortable life as wealthy wives for the rest of our lives. Actually, if you think about it, the information in this statement isn't entirely false. But poverty-stricken, kind-hearted, great potential, a few years? I, who had actually experienced 10 years of hunger and cold, couldn't agree more. And in comparison, my sister's 10 years were smooth sailing and wanton. She owned various luxury cars and mansions, and whatever brand name bags and clothes she wanted were delivered to her home. In addition, even though the couple had grown apart, they didn't divorce. Even if my sister had a bunch of lovers outside, her husband never seemed to get angry. And to say the least, the biggest flaw in such a good condition was that her husband accidentally killed someone and went to prison. As a result, all her luxurious life suddenly vanished. My sister, who felt extremely broken during that time, saw me, who had been ridiculed by her for 10 years for being poor, finally succeed. Overnight, my husband became a young master of a billionaire family. So, out of extreme jealousy, on the day I invited her to the banquet, she shamelessly picked up a knife and killed me. Sister, it's too bad to give such a potential stock to you. This time, it's your turn to go to hell. After being reborn, my sister's words when she pushed me away were still ringing in my ears. She only saw my sudden wealth 10 years later. But did she remember how I suffered during those 10 years? I went to another table, which was originally arranged for my sister by my mother. It was the same nouveau riche man who had been married to my sister for 10 years in my previous life. Mr. Landon, nice to meet you, my name is Felicity. The first meeting went pretty well. The nouveau riche, no. The respectable Mr. Landon handed me a platinum card as soon as he sat down. I only talk about marriage, not dating. If you agree, take this card and feel free to swipe it. When I heard this, I didn't expect such a good thing to happen right away. I quickly took the card and answered without thinking. Get married. Get married tomorrow. The serious man opposite me rarely turned his head to hide a smile. I didn't feel embarrassed either. There's no way. I'm tired of living a poor life. Who wouldn't be tempted by money? Especially when someone hands you a platinum card right away. Very well, this gentleman will be my God from now on, and I'll listen to whatever God says. Even if he kills someone and goes to prison 10 years later, I will visit him every day and make sure I don't forget his kindness. When I got home, I didn't expect to see my sister there. As soon as she saw me come in, she came up to me and questioned me. Hand over the card. I know he must have given it to you. You're poor. It's a waste to give you that card. Hand it over to me. Knowing that I would have a hard life this time, my sister was using the information she knew from the previous life to rob me directly? But why? I said, because you have a big face? My sister was furious. I'm your sister. It's your duty to give it to me. It's ridiculous. Since I was a child, she has been snatching my toys and my friends. If it weren't for my mother stopping her, She would even have snatched my place at a top university. However, it was because of this that I was suppressed by her since childhood in my previous life. So later, when faced with Mason's little bit of tenderness, I fell so easily. Even until my death, I was being plotted against. I said, "What if I don't?" As soon as I finished speaking, my sister slapped me directly. "Are you talking back to me?" I endured the pain and looked up at her, smiling. "Okay, here you go." My sister snorted and took the platinum card. Without saying a word, she turned sideways and bumped my shoulder hard, then kicked open the half-closed door and walked out. "Hey, you're leaving so soon?" Mom came out of the kitchen at this time. "Just came back." This child. I helped my mother, whose hair was already gray, to sit on the sofa. Picking up a washed strawberry, I smiled and said to her, "It's so sweet." Thinking about how my mother would have to bury her daughter in white when I died in my previous life, I was silent for a while, thinking that in this life, not only did I have to live well, but I also had to make my sister get the punishment she deserved. Thinking about this, I picked up my phone and called a number I had recently dialed. A few hours later, I was chatting with my parents about the plot of the TV series. Then my sister called. "Felicity, was it you?" I dug my ears. "Why are you shouting so loudly?" My sister's angry and panting voice came from the other end. "The card can't be used. Did you do something to it?" I looked at my worried parents and made a gesture to calm down. I went to the balcony before continuing. "It's your card. What does it have to do with me?" My sister gritted her teeth on the other end. "The card is frozen. What do you have to do with it?" I could clearly feel her furious tone even through the phone. Then, I heard my sister angrily tell the story. It turned out that after she got the card, she rushed to a large shopping mall and looked around at the stores selling branded clothing. Finally, she found a store she was satisfied with, and the salesperson was already a little impatient with her. In order to slap the other person in the face, she finally took out the platinum card she had just warmed up and handed it to the salesperson. The salesperson's attitude immediately changed 180 degrees. He took it with a flattering smile and happily swiped it. Beep, transaction failed. In an instant, the salesperson's face stiffened. Beep, transaction failed. This time, the salesperson's face turned black. Beep, transaction failed. The annoyed salesperson kicked my sister out. So now my sister angrily ordered me, "Unfreeze it, you hear me?" I leaned against the sink on the balcony of my house, looking at the rows of lush green plants in front of me, and gently stroked them. I said, "It's not my card. How can I unfreeze it?" My sister sneered. "Don't play dumb with me. I have more than just this card. You just wait." My sister left after saying those harsh words. After that, I didn't see her for a few days. Until one day, my sister sent a message saying that she wanted to invite me to a famous restaurant. In addition, she specifically requested, "Only you can come. Don't bring that nouveau riche." But when I got there, I realized I was tricked by my sister again, because she not only brought Mason, but she also wore a formal dress. I don't know where she got the money, but she bought that gorgeous evening gown. And as soon as she saw me, she started to mock me. "TSK, the poor are still poor. Don't you know this restaurant doesn't allow people without formal wear?" I looked at the entrance of the restaurant, and it seemed like there was such a requirement written there. The smell of the poor. My sister pinched her nose in disgust. I sighed, feeling that she was very boring, so I wanted to leave. But then she called out to me. But luckily I called them ahead of time. "You can go in, let's go." Hearing her condescending tone, I had no intention of going in at all. I insisted on leaving, but with a glance from my sister, Mason reluctantly grabbed my shoulder and forcefully led me into the restaurant. At the table, my sister sat opposite me, and Mason sat beside her. The two of them interacted frequently. Every time Mason thoughtfully arranged the dishes for my sister would give me a condescending look. I ignored her and focused on eating. She got annoyed several times and switched to texting full of sarcasm. I still ignored her, because my goal was to focus on eating. Don't let anything disturb me. Speaking of which, the food here is pretty good. This was my first time here in both my previous and current lives. But there was just a little less. But since it was my sister who invited me, I might as well eat well. Just make sure not to waste it. But as I watched dish after dish being served, I felt full, but the dishes still didn't stop coming. You can't finish all these. Do you want to take them home? As soon as my sister heard me, her face was full of contempt. Only you would think that. After saying that, my sister clapped her hands and called the waiter, motioning for me to pay the bill. I looked at her full of question marks. Didn't you invite me? My sister smiled and stuffed something into my hand. It was the platinum card she had snatched from me earlier. It's your card, of course you pay. As expected, my sister's malice had been prepared since she invited me to dinner. I took out my own bank card from my bag and was about to pay. Unexpectedly, the waiter immediately handed the card back and said the bill had already been settled. This was a bit unexpected. My sister didn't seem to have anticipated this either. So obviously it wasn't her who paid. Mason just smiled and said nothing, even though he was a poor boy now, but his innate elegance made him remain calm in any situation. Without understanding the reason, we went out. Finally leaving those two, I breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, a car parked on the roadside caught my attention. No, compared to the car, the handsome guy beside the car was even more eye-catching. How did you get here? That person was Landon. He was wearing a suit and sunglasses, leaning against the car. With his handsome figure, if you didn't know any better, you would think he was shooting a new season of fashion magazines. He opened the door for me and gestured for me to get in. I happily accepted his kindness. In the car, I would occasionally glance at him. He kept fiddling with his phone and didn't say anything. Speaking of which, this was the second time we had met since our blind date a while ago. And in my previous life, I had only seen him twice. Once was at my sister's wedding, and the other time was... Ding! My phone received a message. It was a text message reminder from the bank. 5 million yuan has been credited. 5 million. What's this? I scratched my head in surprise. Is this some kind of scam? Did you receive it? What? You mean? This? I showed him the text message about the 5 million yuan transfer. He nodded. My goodness, he's truly my god. Last time he gave me a card. This time he directly transferred the money. Wow. However, aren't you afraid I'll run away with this money and not marry you? I asked this question frankly, and he answered casually. That's why I only gave you this much. You won't feel sorry if you run away. Wow, that only was used so well. Bachi Baki, powerful, domineering. I felt my heart skip a beat, struck by his coolness. Suddenly, a rose appeared in front of me. This is an apology for not being able to have dinner with you. I'm sorry. I took the rose but declined his apology, because it was I who didn't invite him first, and instead made him take the initiative to come. I apologized too. Suddenly, another box was handed to me. It was small like a ring. I opened it, and it was a stunning necklace that looked very expensive. It had a wisteria flower design and a jade drop pendant set in gold. I was startled, thinking he was proposing. I am proposing. Oh no, did I blurt that out? Landon smiled and looked at my reaction, saying, Can I use it as an engagement ring? Engagement ring? I don't think I've ever seen my sister wear one in my previous life. And I remember her wearing an engagement ring on her hand. I had this custom made recently, and it's the only one. I hope you like it. And it's a necklace that only belongs to you. After that day, I spent all day worrying about this necklace. Because it was so beautiful, I didn't know whether or not to wear it out. If I didn't wear it, what if I met Landon, and it would seem like I didn't appreciate his heart, and didn't like the necklace? If I did wear it, it was too expensive for the occasion. A class reunion? A strange call came in that day. It was from the former class monitor. Okay, I'll go. Half a month later, on the day of the class reunion, I dressed up carefully. Finally, I put on the engagement necklace that had been bothering me for so long. Sitting in a corner, no one paid attention to me. Everyone was busy chatting with my sister. Even though I dressed up carefully, my sister said, "Fake." Soon, no one paid attention to me. At this moment, I was burying my head in my food, and I accidentally heard a few classmates praising my sister. Genevieve is amazing. She knows so many luxury brands. Thanks to you, I was able to fool that nouveau riche last time. What is a nouveau riche? My client was so picky, looking down on people all the time. As a result, I easily fooled her using the method Genevieve taught me, and I signed a big order back to the company. It's so awesome. My sister listened to their flattery with a smug look on her face. Speaking of this, after all, my sister lived a life of extreme luxury for 10 years in her previous life. How could she not understand those aspects? Moreover, the job she found now was in a luxury store, and she was like a fish in water, very proud. Suddenly, I felt something pour over my head. How can you just eat? Have some tea. Saying so, my sister poured a whole pot of tea over my head. Some people around were stunned, some turned their heads, and some echoed my sister's mockery with relish. I heard that Felicity is relying on a nouveau riche. It seems that she doesn't have much money, and she just bought fake things to give away. Isn't it? How can a real rich person like her? How can sisters born from the same womb be so different? It's so embarrassing. Your makeup is ruined. It seems that your cosmetics are also fake. I've never seen that necklace design before, it's so ugly. At this time, my sister also noticed my necklace and immediately grabbed it. Clink. The necklace broke, and my sister stepped on it. Oops, it's all my fault. You won't be angry, will you? Don't be angry, don't be angry. It's just a necklace. You must have bought dozens of fake ones, right? Don't be sad, it's broken. Just let me step on it, it's more suitable for you. My sister's scream sounded suddenly. Before others could understand what was happening, I grabbed my sister's hair and slammed it down with a bang. I had just stepped on my sister's exposed instep with the thin heel of my high heels. Now I stepped on it again, stepping and grinding. My sister resisted in anger, her sharp nails scratching wildly. I used a reverse hold, and my sister screamed again. Then I grabbed her hair and started to bang 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 rhythmically. Who dares to help? It was Landon. There he stood at the door, hands in his pockets. Then, he leisurely took out his wallet from his pocket. Whoever helps, don't even think about picking up this money today. As he spoke, the large wad of pink banknotes he was holding in his hand flew into the air, falling like a shower of money. If you don't want the money, that's fine. If you have backbone, then don't even think about leaving through this door standing. Threats and inducements, strong coercion. To this, I just want to say well done. Now no one was on my sister's side. I hit her without mercy. Actually, I didn't want to use violence. In my previous life, I was killed by my sister. And when I was reborn, the pain all over my body and my own screams at that time would occasionally wake me up from nightmares in the middle of the night, scaring me into a cold sweat. My sister's crazed expression was still vivid in my mind, so I tried to avoid seeing her, but she provoked me again and again, showing no signs of restraint. Especially today, she went too far and touched my last bottom line. Well, there was nothing I could do. Some people really thought they were invincible in the world, and that everyone had to serve them if they didn't get a good beating. Since she wanted to see the results of my boxing practice, then I'll let her see it. I slammed my sister's head against the dinner table again and again, and none of the people around cared about what happened to her and me. They were just busy picking up money. There were even a few that landed on a plate in front of my sister. As a result, the other party eventually only picked up the money and quickly went to pick up the next one. Landon was responsible for scattering money on the side, and he seemed to be enjoying himself. I was happy too. This time, I really had a good beating. Before Landon and I left, Landon threatened the others again. You didn't see anything, remember what I said. On the way home, I held the damaged necklace and looked at it for a while. I put the necklace in my bag and held back my tears. I asked Landon, aren't you heart-wrenching to feel sorry for someone? Isn't it a pity to waste so much money? Landon was still tapping on his phone. It's not a loss, it will be made up. I thought he meant he would earn it back. Then I asked, why didn't you stop me? Don't get me wrong, I was just curious. When people see that kind of violent scene, they usually either ignore it or try to stop it. But it was the first time I had seen someone like Landon, who scattered money to persuade people to stop helping. Landon said, I'd rather be an accomplice. I laughed. Aren't you afraid it would be me who got beaten? Twins, at first glance, wouldn't be so easy to tell apart. No. Unexpectedly, Landon replied without hesitation. I was somewhat expecting it. It was the same in my previous life. I don't know if it was a coincidence or something. At this moment, a large pill was handed over from Landon. I looked at him in confusion. He said it was a digestive pill. Eat one after a meal, and you'll sleep well at night. I was doubtful, and took the fist-sized black pill, and took a bite. It tasted like honey and hawthorn, quite delicious. With a pop, I heard a suppressed laugh next to me. This person has a low laugh point, I thought. After that, although the damaged necklace was said to be irreparable, but Landon had someone redesign one for me afterwards, and this time he fully considered my opinions, just to make me satisfied. Then after a few months, the preparations for the wedding were ready. But at this time, my sister jumped out and made a fuss in front of my parents, saying, Felicity is relying on that nouveau riche. Why should she still have a dowry? The wounds on her face and feet had healed, but my sister's hatred for me had not diminished at all, but instead grew like she was going to stab me with a knife again. Then what do you want? Mom's face had turned cold, but my sister didn't care about that. She hugged my mother's arm and coquettishly said, Give her dowry to me. Mason is so poor, you have to help us a little. It doesn't matter to Felicity, anyway. Losing that 300,000 dowry won't affect her driving a luxury car and living in a mansion, right, Felicity? Shamelessness has always been the word I used to describe my sister. She didn't say that in the previous life. At that time, when I married Mason, my mother felt sorry for me for the rest of my life, so she secretly gave me an extra 200,000 behind my sister's back. But it was still discovered by my sister. She made a fuss about the equality that my mother always mentioned. So what if that nouveau riche has money? It's not mine. I have to plan for myself too. Mom, you can't be partial in this matter. Look, this is the famous double standard. In the face of interests, my sister can always find reasons to be unreasonable and make my parents compromise. Just like when she bullied me at school, the truth eventually came out, and my parents found out. When they were holding me in pain, she angrily pointed a pair of scissors at her neck, forcing my parents to submit and comfort her instead. But my mother didn't compromise on her this time. I've always said that I treat you both equally, so I can't possibly compromise on this matter. Mom picked up a stick and hit my sister. My sister fell down directly, rolling on the ground and playing tricks. Mom was both angry and helpless. In the end, she could only take me and my dad out of the house and leave my sister alone at home to calm down. In the community garden, Mom sat beside me. I'm so sorry for what you've been through, Mom said. I don't understand. Why did your sister become like this, even though I raised you both with the same conditions? I could understand this. Mom has been working hard all these years. She always watched my sister threaten to hang herself or jump off a building, demanding that the family meet her various unreasonable demands. As for the reason why my sister became like this, I can roughly recall it. When we were young, although Mom would treat us equally at home, but people outside wouldn't. Compared to my assertive sister, I, with a weaker personality, was more likely to receive care from the adults around me. And it was under such accumulated witnessing that my sister developed her initial resentment and imbalance. Then one day, that incident made her completely awakened. That day, a few kids ganged up on me. They hit me, they called me names, they said I was manipulative, they said I was crying just to get attention. So everyone hated me, wished I would die, and deserved to go to hell. I was lying on the ground at that time, and I happened to look up and saw my sister coming over. I reached out and called out to my sister, helplessly asking her for help. She took a step forward and I saw hope. She turned around and only left me with her back. My hands were trembling. Her indifference made me sad, and the expression she left me before she turned around made me completely lose heart. Because my sister smiled. It was a kind of surprise, like discovering a new world, a smile. Since then, my sister began her long journey of bullying me. As long as she bullied me, no one would like me anymore. As long as she bullied me, everyone would avoid me. As long as she bullied me, my sister would have more friends. Bullying me became my sister's daily routine. Later, when my parents accidentally discovered the injuries on me, they thought someone must be bullying me at school. They went to school angrily, but the real result was so unacceptable that it seemed to shake their lives. My mother's hair turned white overnight, and my father blamed himself for not fulfilling his responsibility as a parent. My sister was originally indifferent, but the only thing she couldn't bear was that my mother hugged me and cried. So she threatened with her life, accusing herself of not being loved, and that it was all my parents' fault. And the result of doing so was that she succeeded. In the years that followed, she became more and more arrogant. She thought she had completely trampled me under her feet. That's why in my previous life, after our identities were reversed, she killed me with a knife in a fit of jealousy. After breathing enough fresh air, I went home with my parents. As soon as I opened the door, I saw that the house looked like it had been ransacked by thieves. The house was in such a mess, and my sister was nowhere to be found. Mom thought first that something had happened to my sister and was about to call the police. But after glancing around a few times, she nervously went to several places to search. It's gone. Several passbooks are missing. Mom fainted immediately. Later, she was sent to the hospital, and when Mom woke up, she held my hand and cried, "I'm sorry, Felicity. All the money at home is gone. Your dowry is all gone." More than $1 million, it was all my parents' savings. With this move, my sister not only took away the part of the dowry that would be given to me, but also directly took my parents' lives that they had saved for so many years. How could she be so heartless? On the day of the wedding, I noticed that none of the people who attended the class reunion came, including my sister. I heard that many of them lost their jobs a few months ago and haven't found a job yet, which is quite miserable. Also, I haven't heard from my sister since that day. Even the wedding that was originally planned to be held has been canceled. This was said by Mason when he came to my wedding with Landon alone. It seemed that he had a lot of complaints about my sister. Although he pretended to be a gentle and kind gentleman now, I could still see the impatience in his words after being with him for 10 years. Speaking of which, about my sister's wedding, I can't help but think of a small accident that happened in my previous life. When I arrived at the venue, some of the wedding staff mistakenly recognized me as my sister because of my face. They were about to lead me into the bride's room. Fortunately, I met Landon on the way, and he recognized that I was not my sister at a glance. In the end, after explaining the original cause, I thanked him. That was our first meeting. At this moment, Mason put down the red envelope and said that he had other things to do and wouldn't stay here any longer. After saying this, I thought he would leave immediately. But when he turned around, he looked at me and said, "If I had insisted on keeping Miss Felicity back then, maybe I would be the one standing at the wedding now." After saying that, he sighed as if he was regretful. This made me feel disgusted. I hugged my arms and shivered. I shook off all the goosebumps. I was just about to tell him to get lost, but someone beat me to it. Landon flicked his wrist, and the red envelope slapped Mason in the face with a paw. "Such a small amount of money. Keep it and buy yourself 2 dishes. Come on, I'll give you 2 more if it's not enough." As he spoke, the familiar action of taking out his wallet reappeared. I watched as Landon took out all the pink banknotes. But next, differently, Landon handed the wad of money to me. I didn't understand, and Landon shouted domineeringly, "Go, smash it for me." I was a little hesitant, but also a little excited. Not wanting to ask more, I just acted on my mood. "Smash it." "All right." I smashed. "Pa." Just smashed a small part. "It feels kind of good." "Pa." Smashed another small part. "Yoho, the paper is too new." It cut his face. "Pa." I smashed again. Oops, my wrist was grabbed by him. "Enough. Are you never going to stop?" Mason roared angrily. I calmly extended my claws, ready to scratch his face. Landon stopped me in time. Then he calmly took the remaining pink banknotes. With a punch combined with money, he hit Mason in the face. I clapped my hands excitedly. Landon also clapped his hands and called someone over. "Take that thing and throw it away." Mason's face turned red with anger, and he forcefully shook off the other person's hand and left on his own. The wedding proceeded smoothly afterwards. At the end of the day, we reached the final step. However, I confessed to Landon that I couldn't share a room with him. He didn't insist either. Holding a pillow, wearing only a bathrobe that I had just washed, I went to another room. Actually, I did this for him and for myself. Thinking back to the time I had dinner with my sister, she sent me those mocking messages on her phone. One of them was about Landon. She said Landon was not good in bed because she had never seen him fulfill his duties as a husband. In short, he was just a useless man with no physiological value. That's what my sister said, and what I thought was, wasn't I the same? In my previous life, whenever I smelled the barbecue smell that Mason brought back home, I knew that he had just come back from another woman after eating barbecue, and he was too lazy to deal with the mess. I still remember the first time I smelled that complex cumin barbecue smell. I jokingly asked him, "Did you steal food and come back?" And he smiled shyly at that time, happily took out a few skewers of grilled meat, and said, "A friend invited me, I didn't pay." Yes, he didn't pay, because his parents paid. The three of them colluded to raise another woman outside. They didn't want me to know, because they thought, instead of waiting for my barren belly to have a miracle, it's better to find a way for their son to sow his wild oats as soon as possible and have a grandson for them. After all, for two old people, I, who was infertile, was no different from a useless woman. Counting this life, this is the second time I've introduced my schoolmate to someone. But don't get me wrong, it's not about people, it's about attracting investment. My schoolmate has become a boss, life is good. My schoolmate laughed heartily sitting opposite me. I took the document she handed over and smiled and said, "Remember to pay your salary on time. Don't let me not even be able to afford my meals." "Oh, you're a rich woman now, shouldn't you pay back the meals you owe me?" "I can't, we'll talk about it when you get results." My schoolmate shook her head and said regretfully that I had money and became ruthless. "By the way, do you know that your sister Genevieve came to find me a few days ago?" "Really? I didn't know that," and I asked my schoolmate to continue. "It's like this, she said she wants to invest in our project now, and she is willing to give $3 million as the initial investment. But who am I? Am I someone who can be tempted by that little money? So I rejected her. But she hasn't given up these days, and she's been bothering me so much that I want to hit her with a stick." As she said that, I was amused by my schoolmate's fighting action. While laughing, I thought of the previous life. I did the same thing back then, running around for my schoolmate, but couldn't get any investment. So later, I carefully went to my sister and hoped to get some investment from her for the sake of family. However, my sister didn't even look at the presentation materials I brought and directly told people to kick me out. 2 years later, my schoolmate's achievements were finally recognized by a large group, and she received a lot of sponsorship. And this credit was recorded under Mason's name. The news media did not mention his name, but the identity of the sponsor was widely publicized. It was so shameless that I couldn't bear to look. And now it seems that my sister's eagerness is to reap the success she knew about in the previous life. Take what she despised in the previous life and make it her own wedding dress, and get fame and fortune ahead of time. But did she forget something? Let her invest, I said to my schoolmate. Agree to her, but increase the amount. Tell her this is the last chance. If she refuses, don't agree even if she kneels down and begs. Today is the day when Landon and I went to the orphanage to volunteer. He has been sponsoring several orphanages because he himself grew up in an orphanage. This behavior can also be seen as a kind of feedback. A lot of snacks and toys were distributed to the children in an orderly manner. A child suddenly caught my attention. That child was the one who died 10 years later. I asked her age. She is 10 years old this year. 10 years later, she will only be 20 years old. At such a young age, I didn't expect the final outcome to be death in the mountains. It wasn't discovered and reported until half a month later. Although the murderer was said to have been found later, the online comments were full of all kinds of slanderous rumors. At this moment, I gently touched the little girl's head and said sorry to her. I'm sorry I told your whereabouts in my previous life. Perhaps, I think this rebirth is not only for me to take revenge, but also to atone for you. On a rainy day, the park was devoid of the usual crowds of people. A lonely old woman was sitting on a bench by the roadside, holding an umbrella. She seemed almost asleep. The old woman was unremarkable, and she would usually sunbathe in this fixed position. But today, without the sun, she still sat here as usual. "Isn't your daughter coming today?" The old lady made a gesture. I knew she was telling the bodyguard not to move. She allowed me to approach, and I thanked her and sat down beside her. We didn't speak, and after a while, she told me a story. It was a story that happened more than 10 years ago. There was a stubborn woman back then, and she was angry with her daughter every day. She was angry that her daughter, who clearly had the identity of the heir to future group, insisted on leaving home to start a business with an unknown man. The woman had told her daughter, since she was young, that everything she had would belong to her daughter in the future. She would provide her daughter with the best life and give her daughter the best education. She firmly believed that her daughter would grow up to be the most outstanding and perfect leader. However, the appearance of a strange man shattered everything. Her daughter was determined. She said she didn't want everything she had now. She wanted to go out and start a business with the man, to create a world with their own hands. The woman was angry. The woman thought that the damn man must have given her daughter some kind of love potion, even though she finally agreed to their marriage, because she couldn't bear to go against her beloved daughter. But she just didn't like it. The woman was waiting for her daughter to see the man's true face one day and return to her side. But the woman waited and waited, and in the end, what she waited for was a cold and broken corpse. The man's corpse was also lying beside her daughter. The woman cried until she fainted in the hospital. When she woke up, she suddenly seemed to have seen through everything. After that, she gradually pushed her work aside. She began to wander in a park. Every day, she would sit on the same bench in the park, waiting and waiting. "Daughter, where are you? When you were little, Mommy lost you once. You said Mommy is so stupid, just wait here. Daughter will find you, no matter where she is. I know as long as Mommy is here, you will definitely come back." This was not the first time I heard the old woman's story. In my previous life, I was confusedly brought here by Mason and his parents. That's why I had a contact with the old woman. That should have been 8 years ago. During the story, I also heard the old woman mention that she actually had a granddaughter. She didn't get the news until long after her daughter's death, but she never found the child until her death, and instead, she waited for an even more tragic corpse. However, those stories will all be things of the past from now on. I handed the old woman a note and told her, "Thank you for your sponsorship. Come and see us. Our orphanage will always welcome you." Today was another day of working on a project with my schoolmate. My schoolmate's complaints were endless. "Your sister must be crazy. She urges the progress every 3 days. Does she think doing these things is playing a game? Just click on an acceleration button, and the progress will go up? She's sick." I know that when my schoolmate works, although she is serious, she can't help but become irritable. I said, "It's normal to be anxious, she has no money." My schoolmate wondered, "Why invest if you don't have money? What's the point?" I smiled without saying anything. "I guess she not only has no money now, but you said she came before. Wasn't she wrapped up very tightly?" My schoolmate was surprised. "How do you know everything?" I expected this. She's probably enjoying being chased by loan sharks now. My schoolmate shivered. What a masochist who pretends to be rich. I laughed. "Don't be angry. The new access control system will arrive soon. The restrooms in the building are also renovated, so you don't have to go out if you don't want to. If you have any problems, you can come to me." After listening to my casual introduction, my schoolmate immediately turned around and hugged me and kissed me several times. "Darling Felicity, you're my lucky star. I'm going to hold you for the rest of my life and never let go." In the middle of the night, when I received a threatening call from my sister, I thought I was dreaming. "Give me the money, I'm waiting." Looking at the phone, it was an unfamiliar number. Looking out the window, the night was dark and windy. I couldn't stand it anymore and said, "Are you sick?" My sister scolded loudly. "It's all your fault that I became like this." What? I was full of question marks. "Change back. I want to change back now." Change what? What kind of daydream is this? Even if you change back, what if he kills someone again? Do you want to change again? I was just guessing, but my sister on the other end snorted. Your brain is not stupid, you understand. Wow, speechless, really speechless. I'm so speechless that I can't even curse. I didn't want to argue with her, so I turned off my phone and went straight to sleep, looking at the text messages that popped up after turning on the phone. I know where you are. You're dead if I catch you. Full of threats. Am I a little excited? However, what is she thinking? Does she think I still live in the place where she lived in my previous life? Doesn't she know that people can choose where to live and then move? This villa area has a more beautiful scenery than the place she lived in her previous life, and the security level is much higher. If she could really find it, I might even be a little impressed. But in fact, instead of waiting for her to find it, she was caught by the loan sharks first. Following the instructions from the phone call, I finally saw my long-lost sister again among a group of fierce-looking men and women. My sister was blindfolded and tied to a chair. At this moment, she was panicking and begging the people around her. Please give me some more time. I'll be able to pay you back soon, and I'll definitely pay you back with interest. You can't touch me. I'm the legal wife of the heir to the SM Group. If you mess with me, my husband won't let you go. And my ex-husband, although he is a nouveau riche, he has a wide network of contacts, and he loves me very much. Before, he was kneeling on the ground begging me not to divorce. If you touch me, he will definitely not let you go. Listening to my sister's increasingly outrageous words, I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Is this the sister who has been showing off in front of me for so many years? Just now, she was so scared that she immediately recognized the vicious people around her as big brothers. The next second when she heard my voice, she immediately changed her attitude. Felicity, untie me. How can you do this to your own sister? I warn you, don't joke with me. I can kill you in no time. Do as I say, do you hear me? She was extremely arrogant, and it seemed that she was only limited to me. I asked people to untie my sister, and she was very proud. After she was untied, she was pushed. My sister screamed in fright, and then was quiet for a few seconds. Then she started shouting again. What did you do to me? My legs. My arms. Why can't I feel it? Aha! She didn't notice it when she was tied up before. Only now did she realize it. At this time, my sister was lying flat on the ground, very panicked. She started cursing me again. She wriggled around on the ground like a worm. Accidentally, the blindfold was rubbed off. Then she glanced and found that her arms were still there, and they were intact. But she couldn't feel anything in her body. She couldn't move at all. She looked at me resentfully and cursed me. I yawned. I was really tired of listening to her saying the same few things over and over again. Remember to give her an injection every once in a while. Use the veterinary one. Only a veterinary anesthetic is worthy of my sister's beast-like life. Felicity, come back. You're going to die. I tell you, I'll make you die again. As long as I'm alive. No, even if I'm dead, I will definitely make you die again. Those who kidnapped my sister were actually just hyenas attached to the powerful. Driven by profit, they would also divide the powerful into levels. And at the top of that level was the high-level executive of the SM Group managed by the old lady. The old lady thanked me for finding her granddaughter, so she said that I could make any request. Coincidentally, I told her about the grievances between me and my sister, and the mistakes my sister had made to my family. Finally, I made my request hoping to give my sister a punishment. Originally, I was worried that seeking revenge on my relatives would upset this big shot. But unexpectedly, she didn't think I was cruel at all, but instead praised me for having personality and being clear about right and wrong. She even invited me to work in their group if I was interested, and she would arrange a good position for me. This made me feel a little bit dumbfounded. I really didn't know what to say. I could only refuse her kindness. After that, Landon and I were invited to the old lady's birthday party, and the protagonist of the day was not the old lady. The purpose of the banquet was actually to introduce to the public that the chairman of the group had found her long-lost granddaughter. Mason's family was also at the banquet. This is normal. They dressed up like gentlemen today and chatted familiarly with several senior executives. Mason walked up to the old lady and called her aunt. Yes, they are a family. So Mason is not some poor boy. He is a real young master. And the reason why he is involved with my family, it's all because his mother is good at bluffing. She promised my mother that as long as I persisted for a few years, according to the requirements of the old lady, the chairman, let the younger generation of the family leave their parents voluntarily, start from scratch, and then find a partner who can share the same hardships. Husband and wife work together, and after a few years of struggling without relying on the family, they live the life of ordinary people. Finally, if you can get the old lady's approval, then the person who was chosen will be adopted by the old lady, and she will inherit all her property after her death. It sounds like a great condition, but what does it have to do with me? For many years, I have been deceived and sold my body and soul unknowingly. My fragile heart has been worn down to almost stainless steel. Looking at Mason's distorted smile that he couldn't hide, the muscles on both cheeks twitched. A grown man can't hide his jealousy in front of a 10-year-old girl. Just ask him if he's embarrassed. This whole family probably hates the 10-year-old girl who suddenly appeared and took everything away. However, they won't have time soon, because my sister finally came. Felicity, I want you to die. A familiar scene, a crazy roar of anger. The old lady had left with her granddaughter a while ago, saying that the child was sleepy. At this moment, the guests in the venue were all puzzled. Mason shouted nervously, "Security! Who is this? Get her out!" Suddenly, a guest exclaimed in horror, "She has a knife!" Instantly, everyone ran away from my sister. Everyone has only one life, no matter how rich they are. Faced with a villain wielding a cleaver, anyone would be wary and avoid him. Mason was running too. He pushed me away as he ran towards me. Felicity is here. This is no different from the last life. But the only difference is, in my last life, my sister was brought in by Mason, and the knife was also provided by him, just to get rid of me, the useless woman who took his wife's place. In this life, I was the one who let my sister in, and the knife was also given to her by me. At this moment, Mason kicked me twice, then grabbed me and pushed me a few steps towards my sister. She's here. Just kill her. Let us go. The shining cleaver was raised high, and my sister's eyes were wide with rage. Before the knife fell, she said to me hatefully, "I'm done again this life, let's do it again. Next time, I'll kill you the first time I see you. I mean what I say." The sharp whistling sound cut through the pale blade. The terrifying scene of death was about to reappear. I looked up and faced my sister's murderous intent and anger once again. At this moment, the air in the world seemed to have stopped. Suddenly, a figure darted out and protected me. My whole body went cold for a few seconds. Landon. Why is he here now? Didn't I tell him to stay put? I didn't dare to think about any possible consequences. I trembled and reached behind him. Phew. Fortunately, I didn't make a mistake. Relieved, it's a good thing he wasn't injured. Looking at my sister on the opposite side, she also had an unbelievable expression. I pushed Landon away and told him to get out of the way. Then I got up and walked forward, facing my sister who didn't believe me and wanted to cut me again with a palm strike. Is it fun to use a fake knife? Aren't you angry that you can't kill me? Want to do it again? Kill me again? If you resent the injustice of the world, that's fine, but ruining other people's lives is your fault. Don't be afraid, I won't die, and I won't let my sister die either. Death is a relief. Only by living can you atone for your sins. For the rest of your life, I will find a good place for you, and I will even take care of you until you die. The banquet ended, and my sister was taken away. The old lady came back and heard what had happened. She angrily accused Mason of his harmful behavior at that time. She publicly stated that he would be permanently excluded from all family activities in the future. And this statement not only meant that Mason's future family social interactions would be difficult. The same goes for his parents, who will be implicitly or explicitly rejected by the large and small families attached to the world's indifferent chairman, both inside and outside the family. Such a social death is more painful than killing them. Sitting on a park bench, there is no longer the old lady's figure here. The return of her granddaughter brought her a long-lost smile. She didn't forget her daughter, she just cherished her daughter in her heart. And with the seeds of spring that her daughter planted, she started a new cycle of seasons. How does it feel to live again? Landon sat down while speaking, keeping a little distance from me. I looked at the children playing happily in the distance on this sunny day and asked him, "When did you come back?" Landon thought for a while and said, "I don't know, but sometimes I feel a strong sense of déjà vu, and familiar images pop into my mind." I said, "That's not bad, it's good to forget some things." He lowered his head and said after a while, "It seems like I killed someone." At that time, I was overwhelmed by a kind of emotion called anger, because that child was the only child left by the eldest brother I was most familiar with. I knew the child's background, and I also guessed who had hurt her parents. I don't think I'm a murderer, so I believed that I was right. But until I saw that child smiling beside my relatives at the banquet that day, I felt guilty for my arrogant judgment. Whether I married you or your sister, I didn't care. My plan was to stop them, and when one of your twins was abandoned, I would use the other to make up for it, because that was their reason for choosing you. I listened to what he said, some things I knew, and some I heard for the first time. So I also shared with him what he hadn't mentioned, but what I remembered. Actually, you didn't kill anyone. Or rather, you had the idea, but you gave up at the last moment. The second time we met in our previous life, you were sitting on a flower bed, seeming lost. I said, instead of worrying, why don't you go and really confirm the truth? You look like a good person, and good people will be rewarded. I believe in you. Having said that, I paused and continued after a while. But the reality is, good people don't get rewarded. No matter how you explain, no one believes that you didn't kill anyone. You became a murderer, and I was killed by my own sister. Speaking of being killed, I can now mention it with a smile. My sister was sent to a mental hospital, and sometimes I would go to see her when I had free time. Her emotions seemed much more stable than before, and she would even sit quietly in her room to read. That picture felt a bit strange. When I took my mom to see my sister secretly, she said the same thing. She's like her, but she's not like her. And what I thought was, the mental hospital is really a good place. It raises people. Later, as husband and wife, we finally took a step forward in sharing a room. Landon actually didn't have any physical problems. He just had a lower libido, and his abilities were normal. And I was taken by him to visit famous old Chinese doctors all over the country, and my body gradually recovered. Before, although we had agreed that it didn't matter if we didn't have children, it was enough to be happy with the children in the orphanage. But he said that sometimes he would see me with a sad expression. So why not try to solve the problem first? As for the result, leave it to the future and fate. After thinking about it, I think he's right. The road ahead is long. As long as we live, there will be infinite possibilities. Holding each other's hands, anything is possible in the future.